The Libertarian State Leadership Alliance presents our 2017 National Conference, The Future of the Libertarian Political Movement. In this video, End the Surveillance State with Larry Sharp, Angela Keaton, and George Phillies.
2017 Manchester meeting. My name is Matt Phillips. I'm the president of the Free State Project here in New Hampshire. I guess just go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Hey, my name is Brink Slattery. I'm the development director of the NHLA and general interested in politics person who moved here 9 years ago for the Free State Project. Oh, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, which is a great organization I'll talk more about.
My name is Caleb Dyer. I am a state representative for Hillsborough 37, encompassing the towns, oh stop Daryl, encompassing the towns of Hudson and Pelham. I am not a mover for the Free State Project. I'm actually just a native. Let's see, what else can I say? Oh, I'm a Free Stater. No, I'm a friend, I guess. I'm a friend of... What?
Close enough, right?
I'm not a Free Stater. No, I'm not.
I'm so a Free Stater.
Wow, okay. I guess I'm being labeled as a Free Stater. But anyhow, so I'm also a lifetime member of the NHLA, great org. So yeah, that's who I am.
So the topic that we sort of came up with to talk about was how we do activism differently here in New Hampshire, and it's sort of a broad and a little fuzzy topic, and to some degree it's a little bit of a stealth pitch for the Free State Project, because I think in some ways it kind of boils down to, you know, if I'm addressing a room full of libertarian activists from around the country, the advice really boils down to, if you want to be successful as a libertarian activist or candidate, move to New Hampshire and then you will be big L or small L libertarian. So that advice isn't necessarily super helpful or valuable to you if you're a libertarian activist and you're returning home to New Jersey or California. So there's some things that we do that we can do here because of not only the impact of the Free State Project, but because of the pre-existing small L libertarian-ish climate here in New Hampshire, which was the reason why the Free State Project chose New Hampshire in the first place. And I think also, I was just having this conversation with Wes out in the hall about why the Libertarian Party proper hasn't been super active here lately, and a big part of that is because the Republican Party here does not a terrible job with liberty and liberty issues in general. Better than most Republican parties around the state, and certainly than the national.
There is a faction that...
Yeah.
Right, yes. Speaking broadly, there are even, either Free Staters or people like Caleb, who is sometimes what we call a pre-stater, in positions of power in the both in the Republican Party and also in the legislature and in whatever role that they're in, and that even without an LPNH that is ascendant as it is this year, courtesy, thanks to people like Daryl and Roger and Max, etc. Even when that's not the case, the Republican Party still tends to generally, kind of keep one eye on its, liberty wing and try to make sure that they're still on board for general Republican activities. But I think it might also be a little bit helpful to maybe delve into some of the how we organize stuff, which is kind of a question I don't actually really know the answer to, and I've been here for 3.5 years, because a lot of it is very ad hoc. It's very much at the individual level. If somebody wants to, say, run for office, they have to avail themselves of many of the same resources that everybody else does. They have to make their case, their pitch to their friends, their neighbors, to other activists, and go through the same sort of gauntlet that any other person who's running for a candidate has to, which is to prove that A, they've got some principles that are worth fighting for, and B, that they've got some electoral viability, whether that's name recognition or charisma or, willing to work hard, go door to door, et cetera. How we as a community do that is a pretty decentralized process. Certainly the Free State Project is a 501c3, so in my official capacity I can't take any position on any active candidates or active legislation, and in fact, being invited to speak at a political party's event I think is okay, for me officially. But some of the things I'm going to say here, it's like me taking off my 501c3 hat and just speaking as a member of this community as a private citizen. But I think that, how we the community that we have here and how we decide who to support, who not to support, who to support sort of lukewarm, like, yeah, he's a great guy, I'll totally vote for him, but I'm not actually going to go hold a sign. It's all done very organically, and certainly the FSP isn't, despite what Granite State Progress would have you believe, I do not issue marching orders to anyone. And so, we're not directing anything, we're not picking winners and losers, we're not, the very few resources that we have, it goes almost entirely into running into events that we do that tries to attract out-of-state libertarians to come and visit so they can experience that community for the first time and understand what we're doing. A lot of libertarians in the US have heard of the Free State Project. Very few of them actually understand what's going on here on the ground, and so getting them to come and visit and to get a taste of it is critical to our mission to get them to actually move here. That's what happened to me in 2013. I came to Liberty Forum for the first time, and I was completely blown away by how many people there were, how much buzz and excitement, how many actual, state reps were, in the audience, and people that were open caring, et cetera. And I was like, wow, I had no idea this was happening, even though I knew about the Free State Project from the very, very beginning, sooner than most people, because Jason Sorens and I were fellow interns together at Cato in '97. So in 2001, when he wrote that article, I was on the original distribution list. And when they picked New Hampshire, I was starting a business in New York City, and I was like, okay, I can't deal with that right now, and I forgot about it for 10 years. When I came back, I was like, oh my God, there's an actual community here of actual people doing actual things. I want to be part of that. That's what I have said that I'm interested in doing. I don't see any better place to be able to go and do that. So anyway, all of which is a long-winded way to say, I actually don't have the answer that some of you in the audience would be looking for, and I'm going to let my co-panelists maybe expound a little bit on that.
I do have the answer. It's called the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, and we'll give you all the marching orders that you need. No, basically, just generally talking about how we organize activism in the state. Like Matt said, it's extremely organic. A lot of the projects that I've worked on have been something as simple as, I have an idea, I call some friends, it's like, hey man, I want to run this campaign, it's going to cost, I need 25 bucks from you, and you make it happen. So there's a fair amount of stuff like that goes on. But as far as, organized groups of volunteers that are really taking a lot of time to evaluate the needs in the state, where we're going to need to put effort and time, the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance, which I will call the NHLA for less syllables, is basically an organization. We rate every bill that goes through before the legislature so that we know, each piece of legislation, is it going to be pro-liberty, anti-liberty, or neutral, no comment. It's really useful because there's hundreds and hundreds of bills that are submitted each year, so it's impossible almost for just a regular person to go through each one, figure out, what does this actually mean? What does this lawyer speak that the Legislative Services Office wrote mean? All of those various questions. With the bills. Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of institutional knowledge with the NHLA where, we've been watching the legislature for, 12 years now, and have a pretty good idea of the dynamics of, the different groups that are there, different factions that are there, who's putting forth this different legislation, who's doing it consistently, and why are they doing that. All which is kind of important if you want to change people's behaviors, to get like a holistic picture of where they're coming from. But anyway, point being, one of the major things that the NHLA does is we hand out the gold standard, which is a sheet that describes sort of the gold standard of liberty positions of the bills that will be voted on that day. It makes it really easy for legislators to see, how should I vote on this if I care about liberty as a primary value, this is what I'm going to do today. And obviously, like any group of libertarians, that means that we internally have plenty of policy discussions and try to figure it out. And this legislative session has been really interesting with a lot of different bills coming before the legislature that were pretty contentious. And so it's been sort of a fun challenge to find ways to make sure that we're sticking with principles and being effective at the same time. And I think that, Kale will probably have a lot to say about that as a member of the legislature, what you actually see as far as pressure. But I will say that, the most effective thing for political pressure and for getting people to do what you want is making sure that they're aware that there are people that can hurt them electorally if they don't do what you want. So I know that sounds kind of quaint, but in a place with as many state reps as we have, if you get 12 phone calls from constituents about something, it's like, oh my God. I had no idea that this many people cared about something. Because most of the state reps, they just give out their home phone numbers or their cell phone numbers right on the website. So it's pretty simple to set forth a campaign where, you actually, to give an example, unfortunately this wasn't successful because it had, a lot of juice from the police chiefs and from the Senate behind it. But with Granite Hammer, which is this program that funded, it's like $5 million giveaway to the police in the state to combat the heroin epidemic. Although none of the money actually goes to combat the heroin epidemic, it just funds the hiring of more state police officers so they can arrest people for marijuana. Not for long, though. Anyway, so what we tried to do is, organized a campaign where we targeted ads about Granite Hammer at people in each district for each representative. Identified people that were going to care about drug policy, put a pretty provocative picture of like a SWAT team raiding a house on the ad, and said, you can stop Granite Hammer, call your rep today. And we got great results out of it. It was very low cost per click, and we got a lot of phone calls out of it. And then the cool thing with that too is I think that, I don't know, I'm not going to claim, well, I'm not being a good political person. I absolutely claim all of the credit for everything good that happened as a result of this. But no, there were, some reps that, like David Bates, for example, who's against it, who's a very mainstream Republican. You would expect him to support, law and order and all that stuff. And he heard from enough people and thought about it himself enough to realize that it's a giant waste of money, and now he's not afraid to say it. So, over time that adds up, and I think that it's just a matter of increasing the mass of that kind of activism so that people understand that there's real political pressure in the right directions on these issues that matter. But yeah, so that's kind of all I have to say on that. Forgetting.
A little extension about what Brink is saying there. Is, applying political pressure, and there's more than just political ways to do that. In fact, one of the things that I think the FSP does an awesome job in terms of doing is, you're not really involved in doing it, but the suspicionless checkpoint parties that just kind of organically happen. A bunch of Free State Project movers will come and they will protest a checkpoint. Now, the opponents of the Free State Project will say, oh, well, you don't care about drunk driving, or, you don't care about all these things that are bad. We do. It's what we object to is the warrantless searches and stuff like that. And just activism like that is so freaking awesome because it just happens. People who move here just do it because they understand that it's important, to stand up against stuff like that.
And jury nullification.
Yeah, exactly. Jury nullification is another perfect point on this. I'm a member of FIJA, the Fully Informed Jury Association. The guy who actually started the chapter in New Hampshire is a Republican state representative, Dick Marple. He founded it years and years ago, the chapter of FIJA here. And what they do is they inform juries or jurors who are going in for selection that they have certain rights that are, not very well, publicized in other states. But here in New Hampshire, we've had jury nullification legislation that has passed. And essentially what jury nullification is, for those of you who are going to watch this, is the ability of a juror to vote or cast their vote as a juror against the pending the charges simply because they feel that the law is wrong. And that is a powerful, powerful thing. If you have a bill that's passed or a law that exists that states that, we put you in a cage for possessing a certain plant, and you feel that that law is wrong, yeah, hang the jury if you have to. Or, better yet, if you can get the jury to unanimously decide someone not guilty for violating a bullshit law, absolutely, do it. And that is something that is so amazingly built into our, judicial system that, it's just, we need to take advantage of it, and we need to educate more people about that. And the fact that Free State Project members are willing to go out and hand out little leaflets to people who are going in for jury selection is just invaluable, because of how many lives that will help. And I'm trying to think of other activism, because I know that there's tons that people do. There's the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence, which advocates for an independent New Hampshire, which, although it seems extreme, it's not as extreme as you think when you phrase it in terms of, there is 30% of the New Hampshire budget that is provided federally. If you cut the New Hampshire budget by 30%, all of a sudden you have a self-sufficient New Hampshire. You can operate the state without relying on the federal government for basically anything. And, if more people just saw the fiscal aspects of these things and how they could be made reality, even, if you don't have a supposed independent New Hampshire, if you just find ways to reduce state expenditures, you can find ways to reduce New Hampshire's dependence on the federal government. That in and of itself is incredibly valuable. So all of these little activist groups and pockets that have organically sprung up are just absolutely wonderful things, and they wouldn't have existed without Free State Project movers. And that's why I consider myself a friend of the Free State Project. In moving on to political activism, like Brink said, I'm a lifetime member of the NHLA. I actually was a lifetime member of the NHLA before I even knew what the Free State Project was. Before I even knew that there was a movement to come here. There's ways to apply political pressure both in the political arena, but also outside of the political arena. The last protest I went to was actually out in front of Manchester City Hall, and believe it or not, I was wearing this shirt, and I had a nice little sign that was a stop sign that said police state on it. So it was stop the police state. And we were protesting when they came out and paraded the Bearcat around Manchester. And, they had that lockdown in West Manchester because that, person, went and, I think he shot someone. Did he shoot?
He shot up.
Yeah, he shot a police officer.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly, yeah.
In the foot?
I don't know.
No. One of them was in the neck, and it was pretty bad.
Yeah, it was pretty
shot.
bad. One way or another, that's no reason to lock down an entire half of the city. That's something I expected the city of New York or the city of Chicago to try to do. In the city of Manchester, we don't need to lock down people in their homes because someone gets shot. We can deal with that.
There was a bank robbery in Lebanon a few years ago, and they didn't lock the city down. Everybody just chased the bank robbers out of their car.
Yeah, right. There's no reason. There are plenty of people who are armed and ready to defend themselves, and not just Manchester, but the whole rest of the state. And, we can provide a lot of our own security. Police are all right for now. I would prefer more privatized police. But the thing is we don't need such active police departments. And the very presence of people protesting against this, active police department in Manchester was very valuable because it showed that there were a lot of people in Manchester and surrounding areas that don't support that kind of policing, that kind of well, actually, it was reactive in that case, but that kind of over-the-top response. And I really think that when we walked into City Hall that day when they were having, the meeting to kind of address some of those concerns, I think it was very valuable that there was a crowd of people that flooded that City Hall, that made it known that, hey, we don't support this crazy over-the-top policing. And it's that kind of activism that is just, it is just so amazing, so invaluable. And it literally would not be possible without people moving here from, for the Free State Project. So.
So yeah, I think, there's a lot of political activism that happens. There's also a lot of non-political activism that's happening. People raising their kids at home, schooling their kids at home. Bitcoin meetups, lots of cryptocurrency stuff that's going on. Much of which is outside of political, although some of it is also political now because there's let me get this right, it's not a study committee, right? It's a standing commission on cryptocurrency?
Yeah, there is a commission on cryptocurrency. but there's also been some legislation, like
Right.
in 2011, there was a regulatory bill that passed. We've just finally repealed it. But, you know, well, actually,
But the process
It
of,
was like well-intentioned and then it got rewritten.
they missed a
Got
couple of words.
amended.
Yeah.
But what happened with that is the legislature formed basically a committee to try to study it or make some recommendation, and the committee was supposed to be made up of a SEC representative and a banking department representative and 3 state reps and an industry representative. I'm sorry, you want a cryptocurrency industry representative who is also a New Hampshire resident. It's like, well, okay, we got those. No problem.
Lots of those, actually.
In fact, somebody was able to make a recommendation to be like, well, you should pick this guy. And then that person recommended it to the governor. And the Democrat governor running for Senate in an election site, like 2 months before the election, was like, yeah, sure, I'll appoint that free stater to the cryptocurrency study committee. That works, that's fine. So it's like, there's this constant chatter, there's constant environment of all this different kinds of activism going on. Some of it's political, some of it's not. So when you talk about wanting to do sort of what we call in-system, political activism, running for office or trying to lobby for some particular issue or sets of issues, there's always people that are ready to go and do that, and there's more sort of on the way. And so if you're somebody who cares a lot about the libertarian philosophy and ideals and trying to enact some of those in practice so that we can prove that model works, there's just, I think, really unlikely to find a better place than New Hampshire to really get some of those going, outside of some of the very small, more exotic startup societies, if you will. In fact, I'll be speaking at the Startup Societies Summit in San Francisco in August with some of those other people, but like the Seasteading and the Liberland, those are all very small. I hope that at least some of them succeed. I do, I really wish them well. But at scale, I think New Hampshire was exactly the right, not too small but not too big, that we can actually get it done in a way that people will be able to look at it and say, yeah, but look what they're doing in New Hampshire. They did this, and now they've got this, and we should do that here. Yeah, go ahead.
I've seen sort of both sides of this.
Both sides of which?
Like you're talking about just seeing how activism works differently in New Hampshire compared to the rest of the country, having had a front row seat for most of this. One thing I noticed talking to libertarian leaders and activists in other states is there seems to be like it's too hard. And I noticed that here, I don't think some of this stuff is a structural advantage, just how easy it is to have a little activism project and to make an impact, whether it was the open carry litter pickups or, just, hey, I want some influence on a bill, even just at a grassroots level. Like this really isn't, when you break it down, it's not rocket science. And just I don't know if you had, because I know some of you have been more about activism, but how easy it is to do these, because it's always that first project that's the hardest. It's always that first thing, like how easy it is, if you get free people together and sometimes you have a budget, sometimes you don't, just how easy activism, things you could easily do in other places, that it's not, that it isn't so hard. You don't have to think so, maybe you don't have to think so big, like
Right.
some examples that actually work, that would be easily replicable across the country.
Yeah. To answer that is, when people complain in other states about how activism is so hard, you're absolutely right. It's really not that hard. Like if you have time to go out to, even organizing a protest, you usually don't need a lot of money. When people complain about activism being so hard, they're usually complaining about activism in the political sphere. Well, that's no excuse in New Hampshire. I ran and won spending, just a little over $400. I mean, if you move to New Hampshire, you have zero excuse anymore. Like, if you live in another state, you have an excuse, at least in terms of the political arena. But that's it. I mean, the fellow from Iowa who's, with the Libertarian Party out in Iowa, he made good points, actually, I think this morning. He talked a little bit about, how to start county affiliates, and they did a very good job starting county affiliates out there on a very low budget. But, then again, him running for Secretary of State, that was one thing that, that kind of race, you got to donate a lot of money to even that kind of race in a state. In New Hampshire, it's true for like the statewide offices like state senators and the governor's seat and the executive council races. But just for the lower house of the legislature, not at all. There is no reason. I mean, right now there are roughly, I'd say about 10% of the legislature is effectively held by libertarians. You now, if you find yourself in New Hampshire, you now have no more excuses. That's why the Free State Project is so valuable. It's like you're concentrating so many people here who have this, I don't want to say fetishization of libertarian ideals, but they really truly believe in libertarian ideals. And now that you no longer have an excuse that, political activism is too hard, if you're still complaining, what are you doing? Like, and like I said, in other states, there's no excuse why you can't do, unless the law prevents you from doing like an open carry litter pickup, which would suck if it prevents you from doing that. But there is always stuff like that you can do.
And then you can do civil disobedience.
Right, exactly.
Actual civil disobedience.
Yeah,
where you expect you're going to go to jail.
Yeah.
Make a big stink about it.
Well, exactly. Even still, even if it's illegal in your state to open carry, pick up litter with a bunch of your friends, and just
have a PR team.
Yeah. Just have a bunch of people video recording when the cops come and harass you for doing literally nothing wrong.
Literally.
Right. That was good. That was great.
So isn't that really
Times?
one of the advantages of New Hampshire is that you do have those numbers so that you can throw out an idea and then, there's half a dozen people that live in your neighborhood that are like, that's a good idea, I will join you on that. And then there are other states to where, there might not be half a dozen small L libertarians in your county.
Right. In fact, I've had the luxury of living in a town like Pelham where there's like 1 or 2 Free Staters. There's not that many, but there are plenty of friends of the Free State Project in Pelham and Hudson. And I've had the ability to just contact them and be like, hey, Hudson Town Select Board is debating this. Let's all turn up and tell them how much we don't like X proposal. And we've done that. Like Rich Kahn, who's a former Libertarian candidate for state senate, he shows up. He's also run for the House several times from actually our district as a Libertarian. And he turns up to town stuff, and just your presence makes a difference. Because if you show up to a town meeting, you must care. You either care or you're crazy. So, yeah, Bill.
Or both.
Another thing of scale, the party delegate thing. We haven't done this as much as we should have yet, but the political parties are made of people that go to a meeting once a year.
Yep.
And it's pretty easy in this state to get to be one of those people.
Yep.
So,
I'm one of them.
I've been, so if we ever get 150 people there at once, we probably have like 50 or 60 of us there at once. But
The problem is that if you get enough people there, then you can change the platform, but you have the same problem you have now, which is the platform is like, it's a document that not enough people pay attention to.
But you also change the officers.
Yeah.
And that
That's
does
important.
matter, because the officers have permanent access to the press.
Sorry.
So, and it only takes 1 day a year, that's the thing. That's something anybody can do even if they're full-time.
And just to say it, I mean, that might sound to someone that could be listening on the internet as though, advocating that you would swarm a convention, but it doesn't work that way. You have to be elected delegate.
Right.
You have to actually go and be involved, and that's what I mean. I don't know. I feel kind of strange being at an LP convention because I've been a Republican for pretty much my whole time I've been here. It's where it's the party where I feel most comfortable. It's the party where I've made a ton of friends. But I think that the interesting thing in this state is that it's a party where someone like me who has very libertarian views with a small L, I'm not gonna recite a Murray Rothbard catechism. That's not part of who I am. But I'm generally libertarian, and I totally feel at home in the New Hampshire Republican Party. Maybe because I haven't had to vote for anything, so nobody's giving me any crap for that. But anyway, so point being, even if you are somebody that is libertarian, you can find a home in one of the parties and actually legitimately contribute to what they're doing. And like, I never feel like I'm pulling the wool over someone's eyes when I'm a Republican here, because I am. And, you know, I've put in the time and effort to show that I am.
Or conversely, as a libertarian in the Republican Party.
Right, exactly. And with the Democratic Party too, with people that, you know, generally share the worldview of people that vote Democrat, which like demographically, almost everyone in this room should be a Democrat, like just by the numbers, but we're not. But so I think that like more than like taking over anything, it's all about identifying where you have a good amount of common ground with people, and then showing them how your beliefs are, you know, not only coming from a normal place, but coming from the same concerns as those other people, and showing them why why the way that you think is really like, if you really care about these things, then you should transition over to my way of thinking. Anyway, I just wanted to say that because I know one thing that you hear a lot with, you know, the FSP or with libertarians is that they're like, oh, being stealthy and like sneaking into places, and no, it's like they. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I've never heard people change their positions or even moderate their positions based on the room they're in, based on the party they're with. Like I remember at a YR event, we were all grilling Rick Santorum about how we should legalize prostitution, and he was horrified.
All I hear from the Republicans is, why aren't there more of you, and why don't you show up to our meetings?
There was an event last week hosted by, well, it was actually the Rockingham County Democrat Committee, and they invited a group called Granite State Progress, which is a sort of left-wing, ultra-extreme left-wing advocacy group here in New Hampshire.
Ironically, out-of-state funded.
Colorado.
We think it's hard to tell, actually.
No, they're very out-of-state.
Oh yeah, no, they're from Colorado. They're actually legitimately George Soros, not like shaking a fist at your tinfoil hat George Soros funded. They're legitimately funded.
Anyway, so they were doing a thing called Exposing the Free State Project. And there's, I don't know, there's maybe 80 people, 80, 90 people there total, of whom, I don't know, at least 12 or 14 of us were there, were Free Staters, and including me. And for like many of the questions, I mean, she gave her little presentation, and you know, somebody would ask a question. Well, what do Free Staters think about this? And she would be like, well, one of you guys want to take that question? So, like half of it was just Q&A with us, and it's kind of sad that the format wasn't ideal for us to actually like have that kind of debate about it. But and a lot of it, like, I don't think she actually, I mean, doesn't have like a good model of what it is that we think or why, and how like on a good number of the issues we actually agree. Like if you're talking about privacy or war or you know, the drug war, that kind of stuff, it's like, yeah, we actually probably get along more than we don't, as long as you take the unions out of it.
Although they were in favor of Granite Hammer too.
Yeah, well,
anyway, sorry. That's a sticking point for me. It's such a dumb program.
Anyway, so we're sort of bouncing around here, but does anyone else want to ask, have any other questions, or something you want to talk about? Yeah, Rich.
This is probably a good question. You can actually speak about, how does the FSP do a better job with a better demographic than most other libertarian groups? Like the appeal in actually drawing them in to contribute.
How do we, or how should we?
How have you? I mean, 'cause face it, the FSP, you look across all the major libertarian groups, probably has the most balanced demographically.
Yeah.
With the possible exception of maybe S4L or somebody,
Right.
but compared to most of the groups that have been around for more than 5 years. So is there some sort of secret sauce that they've come up with, or any general?
It's a good question. It's in the Kool-Aid.
Better Kool-Aid.
So the question for the camera is just asking about the demographics of the Free State Project, which definitely age-wise tend to be very sort of evenly distributed from 0 all the way up to well past retirement age, and male-female is actually remarkably balanced, especially for a libertarian group. I think even like ethnically or racially, we tend to be certainly more diverse than
New Hampshire.
the basic, the background, diversity level of New Hampshire, which is.
I don't know how high a hurdle that is to jump.
It's not, but it's about 92% white in New Hampshire. And I think the Free State Project, people who are moving here certainly, less white than that. So, I think there's some sort of tag-along effect, right, where it's somebody who is an ardent, libertarian activist, and they're willing to. It's a big ask, right? It's like we're asking you to, uproot your life and quit your job and sell your house and maybe take your kids out of school, etc. It's like a big thing to move to New Hampshire where it's cold and you don't know anyone. So if you get one person who's actually willing to do that, they might drag along, their significant other who's maybe not super libertarian, or they're libertarian but they're not, they wouldn't otherwise have been willing to move to New Hampshire. And maybe they've got, a couple of kids who are in school, but they moved in 2008, and those kids are now, they've already gone through college, they're now, graduated, they're now, thinking about how they want to, what they want to do in their lives that also allows them to, express their political, philosophy or interests in a way that, works with that. So I think that there's some, Brink's parents just decided to move here, so that just happened. So it happens a lot. I think that some of that sort of demographic diversity comes from people who are bringing their families or their significant others. I think some of it comes from the fact that we are not exclusively a political movement, right? So there's some of it that's very political, but a lot of the activism that the Free State Project or the Free Staters do is out of system, right? So it's coming here and starting a business, or moving your business here. It's getting a job. It's going to school. It's schooling your kids. It's raising a family. Maybe you just want to move up to the North Country and be off grid and be left alone. All of that, I think, creates a little bit of a different attraction or a different different draw than straight up
just political activism.
Yeah, a single libertarian, a libertarian candidate running for office would normally attract.
Yeah. I think two other factors in it too, I think, are that the messaging from the FSP is not angry, ever. It's a positive, uplifting, look at all this great stuff we're doing.
Occasionally snarky, but...
Yeah, the snark is not angry. You see a lot of libertarian stuff where it's oh my god, the tyrannical, whatever, and it's all right, great. Okay, I don't want to go and be angry all the time somewhere. I want to go and actually enjoy life. So that's one part of it. And then the other part is that there's a lot of social proof. If you look at the photos from our events and the attendees that go to FSP stuff,
It's inspiring.
it is. And it's not a monolithic block of 22-year-old white dudes. Which, I was a wee 22-year-old white dude when I moved here. But it's much more diverse, and it shows people actually, in practice that this is what it's like. So I think that's been very helpful.
So as an example, we had 1,500 people at Pork Fest last year. 200 of those were kids. So there's a lot of families and kids growing up, etc. The other thing, to your point about the messaging, from the very beginning, the FSP has been very explicit about no violence, no racism, no bigotry. I think that helps a little bit to get the a little bit broader mix of what it is we're talking about.
Another thing about that is, most of the people who are here anyhow, the natives, we're Yankees, man. We don't give a shit. If it doesn't matter what color you are, it doesn't matter your sexual orientation. We've always been pretty open to it, even if there's been some social conservatism that's kind of lasted throughout. There's a lot less of that around here. We care more about who you are as a person rather than what you are as your identity. The identity politics stuff that the left tries to peddle wherever else just doesn't fly here the same way. Just doesn't. So, I think that's another reason why, it's so incredibly diverse in terms of the people that move here. It's just because the general culture in the state prior to the FSP choosing this place was very much, I would say, classically liberal in the sense that, people don't care what you are, they care who you are, so.
So one last thing that occurs to me about that is that also, I think that we have managed to create a culture of doers. So it's people who are actually getting stuff done. They're actually successfully running for office. They're doing the political advocacy. They're actually starting businesses. They're actually raising their kids. And I think that that means that there's less of the sort of archetypal, stereotypical, basement living, pasty, Facebook troll, and more of the, the actual broad spectrum of
Put your money where your mouth is.
of people who are, doing things from all walks of life and doing all those different activities that you can do in life.
Well, that's, and also again, I'm gonna get there one second, but just really quickly, I think that a big part of that is, again, that the opportunities exist in New Hampshire to work in ways that express, your ideas about politics in a positive way. Like I remember being in New York a lot for like the Ron Paul stuff in 2007 before I moved up here. And the people in New York, like New York libertarians, are like the hardest core of the hardest core libertarians, because you're in like this adversarial zone where like, oh my God, like I live amongst the enemy and I have to define myself against them. Whereas here, like you can kind of create your own identity that cares about freedom, and you don't have to rely on pushing back against like, this authoritarian horde that's all around you. So that's really positive. Yeah, Daryl, sorry.
So, question for Matt. How many people have actually moved to New Hampshire as part of the Free State Project?
Our count, I don't know off the top of my head, is somewhere around just coming up on 2,100. And that may or may not include people who've moved and left. Sometimes we know about it and cross them off, sometimes we don't. Lots of people move and we don't find out
Until
years later or ever. So it's somewhere in that ballpark. And then the number, because I don't know if you're gonna ask this, but the number of people who already lived here, they didn't move, but they were here and they signed basically the same, pledge to create a society in which the maximum role of government is the protection of individuals' rights to life, liberty, and property. Is about 26 and change, 2650 or something like that.
It was higher.
Sorry, I was gonna give the Granite State Progress Pledge, which is like end secession and immediately blowing up all public monuments.
Second question, if possible, and this sort of touches on something that both Brink and Caleb had mentioned about, there's, in a lot of the state, there's the attitude of, we don't care what you are, just, don't be a complete asshole. But yet, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that would be the western part of the state, where it's been described a lot like Pleasantville, to where the natives don't like the fact that people are saying, hey, it doesn't have to be black and white, here's all different kinds of colors. And, life can be wonderful and rosy if you just aren't a xenophobe. So any thoughts on the sort of hidden xenophobia? And part of it, Matt had talked about with the Granite State Progress people saying, FSP is horrible because they're moving here and they're different.
Okay. Well, as a native and understanding that there is some xenophobia that exists, that xenophobia, from what I've experienced, is more so based on where you've come from. So, and it has much less to do with the color of your skin or your religious affiliation or your political affiliation. I mean, to some extent, the political affiliation has become an issue of controversy as of late, but it has a lot to do with, like, if you're from Massachusetts, no. Like, there are a bunch of people who are from New Hampshire that just don't want any massholes moving up. And I get that. I honestly, please don't bring your socialism here. That's my personal view. But to some extent, there is this xenophobia from the surrounding states or from other areas that are just not Yankee enough for New Hampshire. And I've been a personal witness to some of those xenophobic moments where I've been in rooms with people from either Western Hillsborough County or even further west who are really xenophobic, like the Milford area. Doesn't matter, you could be a Democrat or a Republican, and you find out someone's from like New York or New Jersey, and you're just like, oh, you don't belong here.
It's even within, like, the North Country people feel that way about the southern.
Right.
Yeah,
It's already Massachusetts.
Yes, you're right, exactly. There are a bunch of people from out in like Coos County and Grafton and Carroll and all those places up beyond the lakes and in the mountains and whatnot that just think that Hillsborough and Rockingham might as well just be Massachusetts. and that they would.
Flatlanders.
Yeah, right. They wouldn't even, they wouldn't even shed a tear if we just like annexed to Mass. And that's totally wrong. I mean, the thing is, there are a lot of people who move up from Massachusetts to escape the socialist hellscape. You know, if you look at all of the border towns from Hudson all the way over to like Atkinson, Plastow area, all of those towns are solidly Republican, and there's a reason for that. And not to say that I like all of the things that they support, but it's a bunch of refugees from Massachusetts that have come up and settled in these towns right on the border to be close to their families back home, who don't like all of the crazy leftists in Massachusetts. And now, I happen to agree with some of the crazy leftists on issues like war and all those things, but a lot of them, also feel that same way. They're anti-war, they are, socially progressive to the point where, like most Yankees, they don't care what you are, they care who you are. And they resist that kind of progressive identity politics, BS. And I think that is more so what the xenophobia is based around. They don't want people coming here who are themselves not xenophobic, they're not afraid of outsiders, so to speak. They're afraid of people who just don't share the live free or die mentality. And I think that's actually kind of a good thing, to be perfectly honest. I would much rather have people who are xenophobic based on that principle of, we don't want you coming here if, you're here to just ruin what we've got going on. And granted, like I have stated earlier, it really doesn't matter if you're a Republican or Democrat. Out in western New Hampshire, you have Democrats who are pro-gun. What other state in the country do you know where you have a significant number of Democrats that are pro-gun? Like, I've gone out to gun shows in Cheshire County where there have been, groups of Democrats that are pro-gun with a booth. Like, that doesn't exist many other places. So, just stuff like that. The xenophobia is more so about the way of life, not about your religious affiliation, color of your skin, and even a lot of times not about your political affiliation. So, yeah.
I think that there's a couple of different things to unpack with what xenophobia means. I have not been asked where I'm from once.
You look like you're from here.
Yeah, I guess probably. But I don't know. I think that a big part of how well people are received is also how much you upset the or go outside of the general social expectations of people from that area. So, for example, in Keene, there have been a lot more, big, visible protests, and not recently. This is really more like 10 years ago. But the thing that everybody brings up is the open carry topless drinking thing, and it's like
the topless thing was done by a native.
I know, but it's irrelevant. That's that doesn't matter because it was done by the Keene people, and so the people that are from there were like, oh, this is really outside of what is socially acceptable here, and that's how you end up with enemies in a community. And I'm not saying that that's good or anything. I'm just trying to explain in a straightforward way, and I think that it's the same thing in other parts of the state. It's not socially conservative, but this is New England, and people have certain expectations for how people behave in public. And so it's not the same as San Francisco. There's not wacky street performers all over the place, It's more generally conservative-ish culture. Now it's changing over time because people change over time, but we're also an older state. I'm just trying to be honest.
Well, I have a comment about this though. So in Vermont, toplessness is actually perfectly legal. In fact, there are people who open carry nude, fully nude in Vermont, not just topless.
Are they really nude then now?
Okay. Well, yeah, they got the firearm again. I was actually in Vermont yesterday. I was swimming nude out at the ledges, and when we came back, well, Brattleboro actually has an ordinance against it, but we went back up Route 100, back to Route 9, and there were actually people out in a field at a market day, just full on in the nude, and they were older folks. So I don't know what the hell you're. No, I'm just kidding. I understand.
I'm just saying, good luck finding that in New Hampshire.
Yeah, no, it definitely changes a little bit when you cross the border. There's definitely a little bit more of that kind of social responsible culture.
And it's not religious. It's just it's not like a religious bigotry or anything. Yeah, it's just a personal keep to yourself thing, and don't air your business and be a Yankee and be a British American.
Yeah, pretty much.
Who your upper lip must remain stiff. But But that's changing, and there's different parts of the state that have different levels of tolerance for that. And I think that in particular, I mean, I'm just trying to answer because you said Western New Hampshire. I think in particular that's a very small town area where it is a lot like Pleasantville, and they like it like Pleasantville, and that's why they moved there. So, I mean, you have to be aware of your surroundings when you're doing stuff, or else you're going to piss off the locals. And that's like just a fact of life everywhere. But I don't think that that's like a defining factor of New Hampshire or anything.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and say we're about out of time. So, you want to ask one more question?
Yeah, one more question. I just want to, because we're talking about the proportion of people that signed up and that haven't actually moved yet.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about some of the reluctance for people to actually move. You know, like you said, it's a lot to ask for. People have to uproot themselves, you know, uproot their homes, their businesses, and things like that. So what kind of community and resources and networking can we do to help those people kind of find a place? New Hampshire's a big state. Which part of the state do I throw a dart and pick and move? And how do I find people to integrate into this community with?
Right. So part of the Free State Project's strategy for achieving the mission is around mover support, and so it's helping people pick a location they want to move to. Welcome wagon to actually get them there, to help them get integrated socially, help them get connected to some kind of activism that they might be interested in, help them to find a job. We're about to launch a leadership training initiative that will start sometime in July. But in terms of how that is actually affected or coordinated, a lot of it, for better or worse, happens on Facebook. So somebody will post in the Free State Project group or somewhere else to say, hey, I'm thinking about moving, or I just moved, what do I do? And so there's a bunch of people will sort of,
We'll just all comment
tag on and say, here, Chris Lopez, who's our amazing, one of our admins for FSP, will connect with them and say, hey, I'd like to send you more information. I'd like to get you connected, set you up with the welcome magnet, make sure we know when you're moving, and get you help unload your U-Haul van, all that. Outside of Facebook, it happens a little less. Some of our activists are sort of sounding the alarm on being overly dependent on Facebook, which I think is a valid and concern to have. There's probably certain classes of industries or jobs or whatever that are easier or harder for people to sort of get connected to. Like if you want to move your business here, it depends on where you're moving from, but we do have business taxes here still. So that's like a thing you gotta deal with. If you're a tech worker, awesome, we've got 3,000 open tech jobs here in New Hampshire, and generally the lowest unemployment rate in the country. But if you are a tech employer and you want to move your business here, well then you gotta go compete with not only all the other tech companies in New Hampshire, but also Boston, all the Boston orbit of tech companies, because a lot of people live in New Hampshire and commute down. In fact, there's sort of a cliche joke that the largest employer in New Hampshire is Massachusetts. So yes, there's some challenges there. The Free State Project itself, mostly deals with information, so it's about sort of connecting, giving people information they need, and then also networking them, connecting them to other existing activists who already live here to help them get situated and get land on hit the ground running.
Shire calendar.
There's a lot of non things that are not the FSP itself that are community driven, like Shire calendar.
Lakes Region Porcupines.
Yeah, the LRP to Lakes Region Porcupines. There's the New Movers Party is technically not a Free State Project official event. That's just a community driven thing. And we're starting to get multiples of those now through the month in different areas.
Yeah.
Trying to get one in Laconia, right?
Yeah. So there's a
Area 23 in some ways too.
And this gets back to sort of the original my original comment, which is, we do a ton of stuff. We do a ton of activism. We are very integrated and intimate community. A lot of that organization happens very organically, just with people sort of jumping in and saying, "Oh, you're a new mover, great. I'd like to invite you to this, that, the other thing." Do you guys want to jump in on that, or should we go ahead and wrap it up? I think we're a little over time.
Yeah, we're a little over
All
time.
right, well, thanks guys for sitting here and giving some questions.
Much appreciated.
And if anyone is at home watching this and wants to know more, our website is freestateproject.org, or you can also email help@fsp.org or hop onto Facebook and search for Free State Project.
I thought you had finished your pitch, but I grabbed for the microphone. And also you should donate to the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance at nhliberty.org/donate today.
Especially because you just made
The Libertarian State Leadership Alliance